Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. My name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the interviewer chair today. Today, we have an extraordinary guest whose courage and integrity have changed lives and rewritten history. Imagine discovering that the very system designed to care for our nation's veterans is instead causing them harm, delaying care, creating false records, and even contributing to the unnecessary loss of life. What would you do? Would you speak out, knowing it would cost you your career, your reputation, or even your own peace of mind? Well, our guest today, Paula Pedene, has faced that exact moral crossroads, and she chose to take a stand. A decorated U.S. Navy vet with service during multiple wars, Paula uncovered the shocking truth while working at the Phoenix VA. She risked everything to expose unethical practices that became one of the most infamous scandals in recent history, known as the VA wait time scandal. Her brave actions led to significant change, from high-profile resignations to groundbreaking reforms and improved access to health care for our veterans. Paula's journey is chronicled in her award-winning book, A Sacred Duty, where she shares the personal, professional, and spiritual battles that she fought as a whistleblower. This isn't just a story about corruption, it's about resilience, justice, and the power of doing what is right, even and especially when it's hard. So, get ready for a conversation that's going to inspire you, challenge you, and remind you of the sacred duty we all have to stand up for truth. So let's dive in and welcome to the show our guest, Paula Pedene. Paula, how you doing?
I'm good, Michael. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, how are you? We're ready, huh?
Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, I read your book in one sitting. It was riveting. When I thought that I was going to get the next nugget and put it down, you left me with another cliffhanger at the end of the chapter. And all your chapters are short, they're concise, they're wonderful, and it tells your story. But before we get into that, Paula, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about you, your history, who you are. We want to get to know you.
Okay, thank you. So when I was in high school, I came from a lower, income family, and we didn't have money for college. So I knew that I wanted to go to college. So one of the ways for somebody like me to do that is to join the military. So I did. I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to get my degree, and I wanted to travel. So it was like, check, check, check. And I joined the Navy. And at the time, I joined as what they call an undesignated seaman, which means you have to go out and strike for the rating you want. And I knew that I wanted to be a journalist. So I ended up starting out mowing lawns, painting flagpoles, cleaning latrines. That's what you do if you're undesignated. I mean, they put you anywhere they need you. And they finally said, "Can you type?" And I said, "Yes, I can." And then I got in the admin side, so it made it a whole lot easier for me. But while in the Navy, when I got to the journalism school, because I did make it to that, they said, "Oh, you're voice qualified." So they continued my education, and I became what's called a radio and television broadcaster with the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service. I had a wonderful career. My husband says I was in the resort Navy because that is kind of unique, and, compared to ships at sea. But the ships at sea would watch our TV show. It was called Navy News This Week. And this is before cable and, all the internet and everything that we have today. I mean, the troops overseas didn't have opportunities like we have today. So we had to bring them the news. And I did that. I got out. I wanted to continue my reporting. So I did. I worked on Capitol Hill for a while. And then I worked on a television show called America Today. And that was broadcast at the embassies overseas. Again, not having all the amenities we have today. We were providing them the news. And then my husband we had a deal. Whoever got the first job out west, that's where we go. Because we're West Coasters and we were freezing back east. We were just in New York. And I got a job in Denver and then a job in Phoenix as a public affairs officer at the Department of Veterans Affairs. So
Yeah.
I was able to use many of my skills that I had learned for all kinds of things. In public relations, it's all about building relationships with people. So, and as a reporter, you have got to do that. You have to get people to open up to you, to talk to you, to listen, and those kinds of things. We're here out west. We've been here since 1994. We had two sons, Robert and Stephen, 31 and 29. And, my service in the Navy was just wonderful. My service in the Department of Veterans Affairs spanned 30 years. So
Wow.
I was very committed to our nation's veterans and doing right by them.
Well, that's awesome. Do you have a favorite story about traveling with the Navy?
I was so spoiled because my first duty station was Bermuda. Went to
Wow.
the naval facility in Bermuda, and it was just gorgeous. You could call me an island hopper, is what you could call me. That would be the most fun thing. So I went from Bermuda, which was beautiful, to Midway Island, which was beautiful but very small and very lightly traveled, and then to Tokyo, Japan, and then I ended up in Washington, D.C. So I think the adage that you do get to see the world and you get to spend a lot of time on the ocean, which I love, worked for me. It worked for me.
It's exciting. So in your book, you use the term PAO. Does that stand for Public Affairs Officer? Okay.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Okay. I was like, I think that's what
Yep.
she meant. And so we've got
Yeah.
PAOs. And
Sorry. I have
no,
to remember those acronyms don't always translate.
that's right. And so you were the one where everybody was standing in formation and could move. You were allowed to move around freely. So that's the
And
best
take
job to have.
photos and write stories. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I did.
Well, let's dive right into your book. I was riveted. It's 238 pages. I read the prologue, the introduction. I read the epilogue. I read it all because it was just so fascinating, Paula. And so why don't you just kind of give us an overview of the book, the inspiration, and I know we're going to talk a lot about what's in the books.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of a synopsis.
Yeah, so the book actually came about because as one who has written all her life, like I was good in English, I took journalism in high school. That's why I got into journalism and broadcasting. The writing was critically important for me to heal. And in the book, you're so right. There's blow by blow description of them trying to kill
Wow.
me with 1,000 paper cuts.
Oh, man.
And, some of those paper cuts were very costly. So the book actually came about because I needed healing. It was, as a whistleblower, you do what you think is right. And, you really have to understand that it can backfire on you. And unfortunately for me, I really didn't see that part of it. I just thought these guys are doing wrong things. It was my second whistleblower journey. The first time it worked out fine. We shared some misappropriation of fee basis funds and delays in care with a former director. And we brought that to the chain of command and they forced him to retire. So little did I know that the storm was brewing when the new director came because she already had her sights on me, didn't trust me. And that's not a good spot to be when you're like the chief public affairs officer and having to share information with numerous groups of people. You can't have a director that doesn't trust you. And that's what I had. And she took me out of my job illegally and unethically. The book tells the whole story. But the book at the end, after getting beat up for 2 years, you need an opportunity to heal. Unfortunately for me, the writing did that. So that's really how it came about. Because I like to write, I made sure that the last chapter would make you want to go to the next one. So I did that on purpose.
That was great. You got me.
Thank
got
you.
me.
That's what I want.
Yeah, and what was really fascinating to me, Paula, is that the VA is supposed to be there for people, for our veterans, which you are a veteran and you were at the time. And I was continually shocked as a leadership guy at how so many decisions could be made. And I kept thinking to myself, getting upset while I was reading the book, saying, somebody's got to see this. Somebody's got to know that this is not okay. And I did my research. I read articles on the incident, and there were high profile people, later on in stages that got involved, and you were vindicated. But I think at one point in the book, you said for 18 months, you were condemned to the library, which was kind of like an underground dungeon. So I guess if we had a nuclear war, you would have been safe down there.
Survive.
But other than that, it's like, wow, it's crazy. So how did you get through that? And what were some of the challenges that you remember vividly? Because I felt like I was going 15 rounds during this book.
I felt like 20.
Yeah. We were in overtime. What was it that causes you to stay in there? Because I know that at one point, one of the gentlemen who was helping you out, I think it was your lawyer, you want to quit. And he said, do not quit. Hang in there. How did that make you feel? It just seemed like you were always simmering at least a 7 or an 8 on the anxiety scale. Like, how do you do that as somebody who is such a people person? You've been around people your entire career, and all of a sudden, everything is taken away from you except for your actual job, which they were trying to take that away too, but you sustained. So take us through that.
Right. So I think the most important thing, and leaders are going to know this, Mo, is you have to have a good team. So, and you have to have a team that you're dealing with ethically and morally and correctly, because when you do that, you build relationships that last. And what happened with me was for years, I had been an award-winning public relations practitioner. We had built the hospital, the VA hospital, to an award-winning hospital in Phoenix. We were getting, accolades for being the best, hospital in our field, in our area. Some of our public relations initiatives were recognized by the Joint Commission because I understood what it was like to be in the shoes of the veteran, and they are our patients. So like when a veteran comes in and they have procedures that need to be done, they don't always know what to do before and after. And I had education materials before and after so that they could, because sometimes when you're coming into a hospital and you hear bad news and you've got to go do this and you've got to go do that, you don't remember every step of the way. And then what did they say? What did they say? So I made sure that we had the follow-up communication so that they were well educated pre and post-op, literally. And I had built a reputation of being honest and ethical and holding people accountable. If people didn't want to do the work that I needed them to do, I would make sure that I found a way to either hold them accountable or work around them to get things done. But, our nation's veterans, it's only 1% of the military today. That's only 1% serves in the military, 9% are veterans. So it is a unique population. And I'll tell you, after having served, that there is a special bond. There is a special camaraderie that you get. And I had a phenomenal team because I had helped to build that team by serving them, by leading them, by holding people accountable, by doing the most right thing. And I think that makes a difference. And of course, the one consistent factor through it all for me as a woman of faith is faith. Because when you're on that kind of a roller coaster, and it is really hard to stay on it, without any breaks for 20 months. It really is. And faith sustained me. When I first filed my whistleblower case, my attorney said, well, you need to file this. And I'm like, I asked him, because I had gotten the whistleblower training, but I didn't know I was a whistleblower. It's not like, hey, I'm going to go out and be a whistleblower today. That's not what you do.
Sure.
I often ask as I go across the country and speak, how many of you want to be a whistleblower? No hands go up because they see what happens to them. They really
Absolutely.
do. So, having my team, having faith, that really helped me. And I think the other thing that really helped me was the example I needed to set. And when you said about quitting, that's what my employee representative would say to me. He goes, Paula, I understand that you are downtrodden and they are beating you up and you are depressed and, you're having issues handling all of this. He goes, I completely understand that. He goes, but I also know that you are a strong person. And he said, I am telling you, if you walk away now, that they will trample over everybody else that comes behind you. And they will hurt more people than they can by you taking a stand for ethics. And when he said that, that was it. It was like, okay, I'm on this journey. And it became a faith-filled journey and one where you have to be careful too. You have to tell the truth every step of the way, because when you're fighting a legal battle against unethical people, and the VA, this is not a VA bashing story. The VA is a wonderful institution.
Right.
It is designed to care for our nation's veterans. But as we in leadership know, unethical leaders can ruin any organization at all. Any. When you have crooked people at the top and evil is winning, that's when you, the people, lose. That's when you lose. So making sure that we have morals in place, making sure that we have values in place, that you have a mission, a vision, guiding light to get you through the dark times. Because in business, it goes up and down. But when you build a quality team and you're leading with ethics, and people see that. They see that and they come along with you. When I was in Phoenix and after being taken out of my high-profile public affairs job where I go from the 6th floor to the basement library, it was really quite a fall. 1/3 of the staff went with the new boss because they wanted, to be on her good side. If they could do something to throw me under the bus, they would. And they tried to. I had another third of the staff that were like, gosh, she's in trouble. I don't know what she did, but all I know is I don't want to be in trouble with her. So people who I knew for 20 years just ignore you. I had a woman walk across the hall. The hospital has 2 hallways. She actually crossed the hallway when she saw me coming. I mean, people would do that. And then you had your third that said, I know you, Paula. The only thing you didn't ever do for this hospital was sleep here.
That's right.
I'm like, and God would send, I called them angels, angel visits all the time, not every day, but enough that it gave me the courage to stand, because it is a really tough battle. I give credit to my family, my friends, and my faith, and my legal team. I had a phenomenal legal team that helped me all over.
Yeah, that's great. And so facing that retaliation, being reassigned to the basement library clerk position, it must have been incredibly challenging. So what were the strategies that you employed to maintain that resilience? Because what I was thinking while I was reading the book is, I think at one point when the story was written about you by the Pulitzer Prize winning author, I think he started out that article by saying that you got to go up and interact with people, and then you went back down, and that was your only interaction for the day, and it was 7:40 a.m. And I thought, oh my gosh, for just a bubbly people person, that must have been. It's almost like you were in purgatory.
Yeah. It truly was. And what Mo is talking about for the listeners is my job in the library was I got to go up to the cafeteria, the canteen retail store, and purchase the newspapers.
That's what it was.
To put them in the rack in the library, because we had all kinds of information in the library. We'd get books in, we'd get newspapers in. We'd have periodicals and research articles. And the other thing that people may not know is that, the veteran population, many of them are indigent. It's kind of why the VA system was set up in the first place, in addition to the fact that we know we need to take care of those who have given us our freedom. We know that. But they didn't have computers. And they didn't have telephones, and they couldn't make copies, and they couldn't fax. So guess where they'd go for all those services? The library. So I made sure that every day I was kind to our nation's veterans. Even though they were trying to make me miserable, I wasn't going to take it out on the patients. I wasn't going to take it out on the staff. If they needed their pencil sharpened, I sharpened their pencil and gave it back to them with a smile. If, they needed to fax documents, I'd fax their documents. We had computers in the library. They had certain amounts of time they could get signed on to use them because other people were waiting. I'd sign them on, get them set. The same thing with the telephone. So it's all about continuing to do good work. And I think leaders can understand that it is imperative that we do good work and we set a shining example. Without that, you don't have a lot of followers. It goes back to the old adage, do, as I do, not as I say. We can sit there and say, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. But if they see that you're not doing all those good things, people know. We inherently know right from wrong. We inherently know good from bad. The hardest part is choosing it every day, because there's always temptation around us. And that's what was happening to these leaders. They saw an opportunity where they could get ahead. They figured out a way they could game the system. And rather than putting any kind of morality in their practice, they decided that, oh, no, we're going to make ourselves look good by telling these lies and delivering these falsehoods and making sure that we're successful. And I will tell you, I think the most important thing that I saw, Mo, is how much time God is willing to give someone to turn away from evil, to turn away. He gave them opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And every single choice they made was the one that was, the unethical one. And I don't know how you live with yourself when you do that.
Yeah, that must have been tough because, like you said, the VA exists to take care of our men and women who have served faithfully, and for the most part does a great job. I think you probably agree. Those that are doing the day in, day out stuff, those people are great. But sometimes leaders, and I read in this story that people just lost sight of what was important. And it almost seemed to me that I thought to myself, when some of these leaders would make their decisions and then at the very end would make their statements about all it was ever trying to do was help. And you were kind of like struggling with, I don't know if you really believe that or not, because from what I've witnessed over the last 20 months or so, and I thought to myself, do people, is it malice? Do they lose their way? And so I guess the question I have for you emphasize the need for cultural change in organizations. So what steps can leaders take to cultivate an environment where ethical behavior is encouraged to do the right thing?
Yeah, right. So, and it was consistent choices. And I think the hard part is that, once I guess the most famous story is Nixon and the Watergate tapes, right? There's probably many others but due to current politics, I won't give examples there. Rather than coming clean, they just think that they're going to be able to continue to hide it. And I think what happens is that evil puts a veil over people's faces. So they're not seeing clearly. Because once you make a wrong choice, it can spiral. And that's why I think it's important for people to constantly start their morning with a prayer, start their morning with some kind of reflection. How am I going to help another person today? What difference can I make in people's lives? How can I do it ethically, honestly, and with integrity? If we start our day with those questions and then at night reflect on what did I do right? Where did I do wrong? How can I improve? I think those are the things that make things better for people. And especially in leadership, that's how we have to lead. And it is so, I think leaders nowadays are given so many temptations to be able to kind of go astray that it's really tough to ensure that we stay on the narrow path. And I do believe it is a narrow path. Not everybody's on it. We can see by all of the stories and the news that you see about corporations. Like I saw just today, Macy's had an employee that had figured out a way to finagle millions of dollars away from their company, illegally, unethically, immorally, to the point where they've had to delay their quarterly earnings. Unethical leadership is bad for business all the way around, whether it comes from staff, whether it comes from leaders. That's why I think the values, instituting values that take place in people's lives, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's great. Now, it was a long battle for you with this whistleblower journey. And again, like I said, man, I was right there with you the whole time. And then there was the light at the end of the tunnel, and then you kind of said to yourself, "Is that light from the sun, or is that a train heading my way?" And you refused to give in to those good thoughts completely. But then it started to change a little bit, and then I think at one point, at the beginning of one of the later chapters, I think it's 32, you said, my representatives, my senators up to this point, they really didn't seem to have this on the radar, but now they do. What did you see from those interactions, Paula? Because I think all of us are interested. Most of us don't talk to representatives and senators.
Right.
You've had.
Well, that was part of my job. Yeah.
that's what you did before, and then you went into this time of silence and purgatory, and then all of a sudden your story started getting out there. And then representatives and senators and the important people started taking notice. So what was that like when you started having those conversations? Did it bring back a little bit more of trust in the system? Were you still skeptical? How was that change in your story?
Well, first of all, it gave me hope. And it reinforced the hope that I had and the good that I was trying to do. Because remember, when you are being pinged on and punished, it's easy to kind of take it out on others. And you have to remember what not to do. You can't, even though they're being unethical, don't get unethical with them. Even though they're being mean to you, don't get mean to other people. The one bad thing that I did was I let depression sink in. And I wish I would have gotten that taken care of sooner than what I did, because I went back to my sailor days. And I think I say this in the book, where you start drinking, because as sailors, I mean, R&R is really important to us. Rest and relaxation, that's our time. You work really hard. You work really, really, really hard in the Navy or in the military. And, so your rest and relaxation is just that. And so that was kind of the hard thing. But when I saw, and I don't think if anybody Googles the wait time scandal, they'll see that, it was actually at a congressional hearing where the truth set the nation free. That's what really happened. So we had given Congressman Jeff Miller, who was the chairman of House Oversights and Investigation on Waits and Delays at VA hospitals, evidence that he was so desperately searching for. Because at the congressional level, many people do filter into them. And people were complaining about the waits and delays at numerous VAs. We thought it was just in Phoenix, but it happened nationwide.
Wow.
And he was looking for ways to put all the pieces together. And when we gave him the evidence, and it was cold, hard evidence, that's when he was finally able to kind of expose it and say, yeah, here you have. If I were to have told you 40 patients may have died while waiting for care at Phoenix, what do you say? Was that part of your look back? Did you know this? And unfortunately for the Secretary of Veterans Affairs at the time, his staff was hiding the information from him. So, we had numerous people that were sharing information, but it just kind of fell on deaf ears. And the turning point was Congressman Miller. And I was sitting there, in the library. There's not thousands of people, because all day long in the public relations world, you're getting pulled in a million different directions. That's kind of what you do. You have emails, you have phone calls, you have FOIA requests, you have events and activities. You're doing all these things. And in the library, there's a lot of downtime. So what I would do in that downtime was like I'm doing with you. I'd plug in my headphone and I'd watch, the hearings. That's what I would watch. And if a patient came up, I'd put it down and I'd help him or her and then go back to listening to the hearings. So I got very adept at listening to the hearings, watching. Of course, being a public relations practitioner, members of the media. So, when Dr. Samfoot, who was a critical guardian angel in this whole battle, came to me and said, Paula, I'm going to have to retire to blow this whole thing wide open because they're not listening to me. I stood up from my chair and I said, I will help you. And that's when the tide really started to turn. So as a whistleblower, for people just to know, you do have a couple of safe avenues. If your leadership isn't taking your information seriously and they're not listening to you, the other safe avenues that you have are members of the press or members of Congress. And you can share information with them about your organization without having additional repercussions. Unfortunately, sharing it internally made me, I had a huge bullseye. It wasn't even on my back. It was right in front of me.
It really was.
Yeah. But so when that hearing took place, and to this day, April 9, 2014, I still remember it. That's how important it was. So that's when the tide began to turn.
Yeah. And Paula, why did you wait so long? I was reading the book and I was like, she needs to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And,
I did. Yeah.
Well, and I remember your colleagues would ask a question and you would the only thing you would say is, I am not at liberty to say. And then I just thought to myself, she needs to talk to the press. She needs to get it out. And then you finally did. Is the reason that you waited so long because you didn't know that you were able to? Or I know that even when you talk to the press, you had to be very careful with what you said. How did that come about? And do you wish you would have said something earlier now? Or do you think that the timeline was exactly what it should have been?
Yeah, the timeline was exactly what it should have been. And the reason I couldn't speak at the time, Mo, they had placed an illegal and unethical gag order on me. So what they said was that I was under investigation for an infraction, and they wouldn't tell me what the infraction was.
Well, and it was only a 30-day. It was supposed to be done in 30 days.
It's supposed to be done in 30 days, right? It ended up taking 20. So, at the 30-day mark, at the 60-day mark, at the 90-day mark, I've hired attorneys at this point in time. And, they're speaking on my behalf. I cannot speak. And the reason they advised me completely not to speak was because my supervisor had placed the gag order on me. And they were trying to fire me. The VA was looking for every opportunity to fire me. So if I violated my supervisor's orders, it gave them a really quick way to fire me because as a federal employee, you have a lot of rights and protections. You do. So my lawyer said, I know this is going to be tough for you. You cannot speak. You can't tell your friends. You can only tell your family. And that's all I could talk to. My network went from thousands of people to probably two handfuls. And you talk about an outgoing, social, engaging personality. There was many challenges I faced along the way, and that was one of them. But what I did do, and I think I put this in the book, was I started writing anonymous letters.
Yeah, that
So
was
that
great.
was like, again, the writer in me had to do something. My lawyers are telling me you have to sit there and wait. Everybody's saying, and you can't say anything. Well, if you go, it's going to be easier for them to trample everybody behind you. So here,
Yes.
you're just going to have to sit here and be miserable for however long this takes.
Gosh.
And yeah, so that's kind of, so the anonymous letters, they would help to a degree. But the problem is they could never talk to the person that wrote the letter because I could never sign my name. So when Sam got involved and I told Sam, look, I've been writing letters, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. And he goes, let me do my own research. He did his own research. He verified what I had shared. I gave him evidence. And when he said, I need to retire and blow this whole thing wide open, that's when it all came to light.
Yeah, I started liking the story a little bit more at that point. I was running out of energy. I was running out of time.
Yeah, the hope is there. It just takes a while for it to come. Because that's how long it took for me, Mike. I mean, when you think about it, so I'm in under a 30-day investigation. I have 2 high points within the first year of the 30-day investigation. And then I'm in the dungeon for like 21 months before I finally start to see the light, or 20 months. And it's like, because once things happen, then I was able to get my settlement quickly because they knew they had nothing on me. They even told them they had nothing on me. But being unethical leaders, they didn't do what VA Central Office told them to do, which was to put me back in my job, So,
and what's such a bummer about that they knew, and I remember at one point in one of the chapters, you actually bullet pointed 5 or 6 things that they knew but didn't tell you. And I was so infuriated because I thought to myself, by that time, I had heard what it did, the strain on your family financially, emotional. You couldn't tell them everything. And even though I knew the story, and when you had to tell one of your sons who was really, really distraught, and he just says, what's going on? He said, as a federal employee, I just can't say that much. It was, there needed to be reform so that people that don't have the weight of the government behind them, because that's what your supervisors had. Oh. And again, there are very good leaders in the government. But when you find a bad one and you're under that, it was disheartening and it was upsetting. How do you feel about the state of the VA now? Are you optimistic? How should our veterans feel about the VA and what's there for them?
Well, I think the VA has some issues still, but overall, I do believe they uphold their mission on the Veterans Health Administration side to try to provide quality health care for our nation's veterans. There's 3 administrations under the department. They have Health Administration, which is where I work. They have the Benefits Administration. That's where you can get your GI Bill, your home loan, your disability compensation for any injuries while in service. That tends to have some weight in processing, but when they can rule in the veterans' favor, most of the time they tend to. And then the National Cemetery Administration. And I will tell you, the final resting place for our nation's veterans, they get the most stellar marks. They do, because that part of our administration is empathetic, and they understand the tragedy that a family is going through. And if we could take that empathy and put it into cultural values and make all of the, workers within the department on point with that, that there would be nothing stopping the VA from being the darling of the agencies. There would be nothing stopping it. But I don't think that they have had a cultural change program that has stuck. They do customer service training, and it's kind of like, oh, another flavor of the month. Well, Congress keeps throwing way too much money at the Department of Veterans Affairs. They don't even know how to spend it. They misappropriate it. They've had a lot of challenges with the electronic medical record. So they're facing big challenges because it's a big agency. And I think that any leader that's worth their salt would tell you, if you have a good culture, you have everything. And who was I reading? Derek Hall. So Derek is the CEO of the Diamondbacks here in Arizona. And he says, I disagree with people in business who say the customer has to come first. He goes, we don't do that at the Diamondbacks. We put our employees first, because I know if I take care of my employees, they are going to take care of my customers. And, that is the best philosophy. And that's what I would do. We often over communicate it, because I told my boss that, was wonderful that I had for like 16 of my 20 years there. If we tell them the information, it helps to fill the void. If you have a void in information, rumor fills the void. So it is much better for your PR person to communicate when they can, to share the information when they can, to do their research. I would ask people questions all the time. I'd ask our patients, our staff, our volunteers, our employees, what they liked, what they didn't like. And we would take and make campaigns to improve in those areas, because they're honest with you. If they feel like you're going to do something with the information you share, then they tell you, then they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you. I think another problem leaders make is not doing any information with anything with the information that employees share with you. I would say, have suggestion boxes. Make sure that there's ways for them to talk to you. One of the neatest things we did in Phoenix was, my boss was an introvert. He did not, my best boss there, he was not one that liked to go out. I would force him to do town halls, and he would mentally, prepare himself. Okay, tomorrow I have to be on. And it was like 5 town halls in one day. So we covered every single shift. And all the workers knew from him what was happening. But the one thing I did was like, you have to look at personalities too. It was like, I said, where I think would be good with you is a director's hotline, where you just have a time out of your day. And we made it on Mondays, and it was a 2-hour window. Anybody could call him. It could not be a personnel issue. Could not. We had parameters around it. Couldn't be a personnel issue. If they were in trouble, if they wanted to rat on somebody else, whatever, none of that could come to him. But if you had an idea, a suggestion, a concern, that could come to him. And oh my gosh, the things we were able to implement, it was like amazing. It was just amazing. And some of them were simple, Mo. It's like we had this big conference room where we used to have lots of meetings, and many doctors, it was during the time of pagers. They still use them, and they would get paged. They'd have to come out of the conference room and run down the hallway looking for a phone. One of the doctors suggested, could you just put a phone up right outside the conference room door? I mean, gosh, it's simple. But see, if you're not willing to listen, you don't even know the simple things that are going to make a difference in the lives of employees. And those little things, that was a big thing to our doctors. And you know what? That was a big thing to our patients, because if that doctor could get on a call and get them what they needed in a shorter amount of time, that was phenomenal. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody's listening from the president's office, I think I have my nominee for the director of Veterans Affairs right here.
He's actually selected a chaplain, an Air Force chaplain, as a nominee. So, and I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of an interesting perspective because, most people of the cloth have morals, ethics, and values. There's
Yeah.
unfortunately, evil is pervasive, but he seems like he might be a good contender. So we'll see. We'll see.
I might have to give his office a call then and just slide your name
Just
in
say,
there and
hey, you're
say, hey,
looking for a PR person?
that's right. Hey,
That's right.
so Paula, reflecting on your journey
Mm.
and the changes that ensued, what legacy do you hope to leave in the realm of ethical leadership? Because you've used that phrase, ethical leadership, a couple of times in the book, on the podcast. I can tell it's something that you really care about. And also, what are your aspirations in the future of organizational ethics?
Yeah. So I think my code of ethics comes from the fact that my parents raised me as a Catholic. And for those Catholics that are in their 60s, it wasn't always easy. They were able to help us see that it was a choice, good or evil. And there was guidelines that went with it. And in addition to the 10 Commandments, there was other things. In the Navy, it was 3 values that we uphold: honor, courage, and commitment. And I would say if you could only look to one, it would be embrace honesty in all you do. Because you know what? If you're honest, truly honest, you will see the path in front of you. Because when you're honest, that's God's light. When you're honest, that's the Holy Spirit guiding you. When you're honest, you're doing the most right thing by all concerned. That's, I think, the one thing that I would, if you had to just choose one, I say choose 3 to 5, but if you have to just choose one, I would hang my hat on that one because that is the most important, and make sure that you're living up to that value too. So between my Catholic upbringing, the military that ingrains in you a lot of wonderful things, how to be a good employee, how to work hard, how to serve each other, how to build camaraderie. The teamwork is especially critically important. Figure out ways to strengthen your teams and then create a culture of excellence. If you do everything right, you do create a culture of excellence, and it shows. It just shows. So in the future, it was really hard for me to be a whistleblower, to have to deal with the 22 months of horrific challenges that I face, the sadness that it brought, and it still brings to me and my family. I don't think whistleblowers ever fully heal, but I think if I could leave one thing with people, it is that having that moral code is best for business. That's really what's best for business. And in the future, I retired from the VA. I was able to finish out my VA career. I never got to go back to the job that I loved, being the public affairs officer in Phoenix, and the Office of Special Counsel had some good reasons for that. But I think for the future, it's all about continuing to do the good work. I think the thing that I never saw coming, Mo, was the fact that I would be a veterans advocate. I care for veterans as a veteran. I know
Right.
camaraderie. I have camaraderie, and I've advocated for them, but I never thought I would be a veterans advocate on a national scale where the work that we did would actually change the entire VA system, implement laws that came into place to help fix the wrongs that were done to our nation's veterans. And, it's really just about, as a woman of faith, God had me where he needed me to be, as miserable as I was, as depressed as I was. Who else knew the media? Who else, had worked with Dr. Foote? Who else knew members of Congress? Who else knew the patients would trust them? The patients would tell me about the waits and delays. I was riding with the woman in a van pool that kept the secret wait list. She would cry on my shoulder.
Mm.
You know, God He had a journey for me. I didn't know it when I got banished to the basement. I didn't see it pretty much until it was all over. But He had me where He needed me to be. And I think it's important to understand that timing comes not always in our time, but when it's right.
Paul, before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom for vets, about vets, for my leaders, my audience, your audience? What do you want people to know?
Yeah. So I think we've talked a lot about leadership, and all of those things hold true. But I would say one final thing. I'm heading a nonprofit now that honors and recognizes veterans. And we often get caught up with the social services that veterans need. And those are truly important things too. Dealing with post-traumatic stress, dealing with the homeless veterans, dealing with the horrible suicide rates that we have amongst our veteran population. Those are all important things. And that touches about 15% of the population, but the veteran population. But the other 85% are just out there trying to do good work every day. I would say, if you can, take the time, find an organization that honors and recognizes our nation's veterans, and says thank you. Because a thank you to a person who's humble, that's still probably carrying some scars inside that just really can't share with somebody else, can help them heal. And I have seen that in the work that I do now, and with the Honoring America's Veterans, Phoenix Veterans Day Parade. We've been at it for 28 years now. To this day, it makes veterans cry. The fact that the community comes out and honors them and recognizes them and says thank you. I see the veterans on the sidelines crying. The veterans in the parade are extremely grateful. They come back year after year. So don't forget to say thank you to a veteran. Not necessarily welcome home, but thank you for my freedom. Thank you for my freedom. We have our freedom today because someone is out there right now. They'll be away from their family this Thanksgiving on a front line somewhere, defending our freedom, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. And I hope that we repay that debt, all of them.
Before we go, because Paula just mentioned the parade, which was her baby. She loves that parade. I loved hearing about it. And early on in the book, Paula, I want to read this from your book. I have it pulled up right now. And just so everybody out there understands how important that event and events like it are, I want you to hear this. And this is what Paula writes. One Korean War veteran said about the parade, "After being a grand marshal in the parade, the demons I faced every night in my dreams were gone." A member of the Navy who served in Operation Enduring Freedom echoed that by saying, "Words cannot describe what the parade and being a grand marshal did for me. It's beyond anything else in helping me heal." And Paula, I'm telling you, when I read that, I got teary-eyed. I could feel a lump in my throat. And I was like, gosh, she already got me, and we're not even hardly into this book. So for my readers out there, it was wonderful. So Paula, thank you so much for sharing your remarkable journey with us today. I know that journey's not over. Your story is a testament to the power of integrity, courage, unwavering dedication to what's right, even though it's not easy. And so you've reminded all of us here at Rising Tide that leadership is not about titles. It's not about positions. It's about the choices that we make, the values that we uphold, and the impact that we get to have on others. So to my listeners, I encourage you to pick up a copy of Paula's book. It's right there on Amazon.com. It's a click away. It's called A Sacred Duty. Get that today. It's not just a story of a whistleblower. It's a guide for standing firm in your beliefs and leading with purpose. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to lead with integrity and courage. So to learn more about Paula's ongoing work, visit her at her website, which is www.paulapedene.com. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning into the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. Remember, leadership is a sacred duty. See how I did that there, Paula?
Good job.
We all have a role to play in creating culture, accountability, respect, care for those that we lead. So if this episode inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear Paula's story. So until next time, keep rising, keep leading, and keep making a difference. Lead well. We'll see you next time.
Cute.